Well, welcome back to another edition of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden, and this is live, as usual, from Ottawa. And happy Victoria Day. I totally got caught off guard on that one this morning. I saw one of you commenting about Happy Victoria Day, and I thought that was next Monday. So you can be too fixated on the news and miss out on the important things. I got nothing planned now for Victoria Day. So there you go. But when we come back, it's a real pleasure to have Anita Krishna on the show, a Vancouver journalist, and she's got a real story to tell. But we're going to talk about the news, the current events as well. So we'll
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, we need to resolve to resist, especially in this hour. This is a critical hour. And this is why we have new media. And that's really if there's a theme about today's show, it's about free speech being protected by independent new media and the importance of new media, given the fact the mainstream media will always, always, always back up the liberal establishment. So, without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Anita to the show. It's we have been trying to do this for quite some time.
I know. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's 8 a.m. on a holiday Monday. Thank you, David.
Like I said, I totally forgot it was Victoria Day today, and I've just been so fixated on other things. And of course, we had some personal tragedies last week, and I have been totally caught off guard. And
I know, because when you do this daily, there's no holidays.
No, there's no holidays. That's right.
No.
But I wish I had gone to the grocery store yesterday. That's all I can say, because I thought I was going today. Oh, anyway. Before we get into your experience with the mainstream media, I really want you to tell your story here. And like I said, I'm trying to get you on some other broadcasts with a larger audience than me, so you can talk about how fair and unjust the mainstream media has been to you. But I want to touch on Joe Biden. I write for a couple of American news media. Well, actually, three of them: Human Events, the Post Millennial, and Blaze Media. So I do a lot of American news. I don't do a lot on this show because it usually just bombs, because most of my audience is Canadian.
Right.
But I can't ignore the story, because last night, of course, we learned that Joe Biden, former President Joe Biden, has a very aggressive form of cancer. And as a lot of conservative podcasters were saying last night, we're not going to in any way think this is a wonderful thing. This is a tragedy, especially if you've experienced this in your own family, as I have. It's a terrible thing to go through, and I wish Joe Biden all the best. But for me, the story here, and I don't blame Joe Biden for this, because I think Joe Biden was so far gone mentally through most of his 4 years as president. I blame his wife, who I think was a tyrant and absolutely unbearable in terms of the treatment she gave him. But what I'm seeing is that the mainstream media in the States is now saying, hey, we had no idea. We had no idea that Joe Biden had cancer, and this cancer might have gone back a little longer than the diagnosis. But more importantly, they're pretending they had no idea Joe Biden was suffering from serious dementia. And they covered it up. And I cannot believe I'm seeing Jake Tapper, from CNN's Jake Tapper, write a book and go on every possible broadcast he can to talk about how he had no idea that Joe Biden was suffering from dementia, and the White House was covering this up. Well, clearly the mainstream media was covering this up, and they did that until it was just too impossible to cover up after that first debate with Donald Trump. But do you believe how
Mhm.
incredibly delusional the mainstream media can be? Not just in Canada, but in the US. They continue to push a narrative, even though nobody really believes it anymore.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's just staggering on so many levels. Like, all you had to do is take one look at him and sort of go, You're a little bit too old." Now you can be old because Donald Trump is the same age, but you can be fit and spry. That Joe Biden is ill. Right. So he's in no position to run the country. Sometimes there's just a time to retire, right? Like they don't retire the Pope, where it's like, that is ridiculous. There's a time to go. You cannot do the job. You are not sharp enough to make decisions. But Joe Biden was the guy. He was their guy. Who else were they going to polish up and put in place? So they tried so hard to just move him out there like he was the guy. And literally, to all of us watching, it was a Weekend at Bernie's situation, right? It really looked like that for whatever reason. Because another thing that's hard to fathom is that, well, in all of the U.S., you don't have another guy. You don't have another Democratic candidate you could run, because there was a time where nobody even considered Kamala Harris. Like, her name didn't come up. Like, when people wanted to get rid of Trudeau, nobody was like, yeah, let's put in the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland. Her name didn't even come up as an option. And same thing, there was a time with Biden when you could see this guy needs to go. He needs to be resting in a rocking chair with a blanket on his lap, right? And nobody had any faith in Kamala Harris. But I think the machine then decided, this is our girl. We got to spit shine this girl, clean her up, put her on in a nice pantsuit, and roll her out there and make her look like she's the one. And they sure did that. I mean, they did that to the point where they could clean her up enough where she could go toe to toe with Trump, although it's very difficult to do that. But there was a tight race. And the media, the media now to say, we didn't know, we didn't know. Yes, you know, but you are pushing a narrative. You can't speak out against the narrative. And this is the thing that just like, oh, just upsets me about journalism. This was never the way it was, or maybe it was this way and I just didn't know in all my years. But I always saw a counter side to the story. But now it's like, whoever funds your company, that is the person who you must toe the line for. Otherwise, you will literally be out of a job and out of funding. That's what it seems like. And on another note about his cancer, I think we know, but we probably can't say on YouTube what might cause cancer or accelerate cancer. We all know, we're all thinking the same thing. And there was also a time when politicians, we thought, oh, did they take the real one or did they not take the real one? And so I think maybe he took some of the real one. And unfortunately, those are the consequences that can happen. That's why so many of us were screaming about it, that this is not safe. So perhaps that was a factor, age factor, and maybe he took quite a few of them, and he's ill as it is. So yeah, it's unfortunate news. Nobody wants anyone to be ill, but you must tell the truth as a journalist.
Well, you brought up that that factor that we're not supposed to talk too much about, but I certainly would identify the fact that there was controversy over the vaccine. There continues to be. And that played a large part in what happened to you, didn't it? And I want to make sure we cover your story here, because was it Global or CBC you were working for at the time? I know you
Global.
worked for both of them. It was Global, and Global decided that you were entirely dispensable because you didn't agree with taking the vaccine.
Uh, well, my story is a little bit different. I often talk about this. I've talked about this on other podcasts, and I talk about this with my friends who always ask me, but um I was a director, right? So I was a control room director, and a lot of people don't know like what you do in that job. So maybe one day I should do a podcast on what exactly my job was, right? So you guys have an understanding. But with that, I don't know if YouTube will be even interested, but it was a technical job. So I worked in the newsroom, but I was the person putting the newscast to air. So I'd be saying,
Uh,
saying 1 minute, Donna, we're going to roll the opening in 1 minute. Okay, through 30 seconds. Here we go. And then I roll it. And then I go, stand by, coming to you. I'm constantly talking in an anchor's ear. And then I'll be talking to my crew. okay, tilt up on camera 2, do this, pan, zoom in, it was like that. And so I would like, sometimes a whole show could go by and I don't even hear any words spoken in the show. I'm so busy going to what the next thing is. Is it a live hit? Are we going to the chopper shot? Are we going to another piece of video? Is it sports next? Like my mind has to always be on what's next. That many times when a show was done, I couldn't even tell you what the news was because my job was to, right? Because I
Yeah.
couldn't, you can't hear the content, right? You like, say you're doing a live hit with a reporter and the anchor goes, oh, there's a big murder trial today. And Steve Smith is down on the scene with the latest. Steve? And then you go to Steve. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes before you go to Steve. Like Steve might be like, my mic doesn't work. I can't hear anything. Then you go, stand by. You're constantly getting the next thing ready so that it looks presentable when you go to air. So that's
Yeah.
that.
I just
But
want to
anyway,
say
yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I was
Okay.
very briefly a producer with Sun News in
Oh,
Toronto. So I used to look at that director and said, I think her job is even more high stress than what I'm trying to do. So that's what you did was incredibly stressful work. And
oh yeah, you get that, right? Like live newscasts, right? Like what, yeah. If you're producing, we're listening to you. You've built the rundown, right? As the producer.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And so we're following the rundown. You are actually the editorial person in charge of that show. I'm just putting it on the air. So that was my job. So basically, that was a long way of getting around saying I'm in the newsroom. I see what's going on. And when the COVID nonsense happened, I I cannot describe how I just thought it was like a twilight zone. Like especially when we started shutting things down, the borders were shut, the sports teams, NBA games, MLB games, like everything was canceled and the whole world decided to shut down. And I thought maybe you should figure out who's dying, what happened, how many people have this, how do you get this, how bad is this? These are just basic questions, but it was like a frenzy to shut everything down and to scare everybody in a way I had never seen before. And the thing I always found curious is that all the people I worked with went with it without going, wait, hang on a minute. Isn't your job to sort of, what do you do as a parent? You kind of, if the kid is freaking out, you kind of just step back and calm them down. I don't understand why we fueled the frenzy and without sort of going, okay, how many people in the world have this? 5. How do diseases get spread? Nowadays, you can't spread pandemics. Like it's we have good hygiene. So what medications are available? What's going? Nobody asked reasonable questions. So as I asked more questions and then learned more, I was abused over there at Global in the same way many people faced abuse by their friends. Like
Mhm.
anything you bring up, like, did you hear, this is so long ago now, but did you hear there's a laboratory? Do you know what gain of function research is? Did you hear what this biologist has to say? Do you hear what this Dr. Hoff has to say? That he wrote a letter to Bonnie Henry saying people in my community are suffering because of the Moderna shot. And I'm writing to you to say that this is not safe. That letter went around. Do you think global ever put that on TV? They just said it was safe and effective, and you better line up, even if you're pregnant. And if you're pregnant, you're the first one to take it. You have no way, Bonnie Henry, of telling anybody, any pregnant woman that is safe, because you have no way of knowing that, and you know that. So that is evil. So I might put up with a lot of things, but I'm not putting up with harming people and unborn children to that degree. And the more I spoke up about, that was the thing that bothered me the most. And like, you think any human being that has a brain or has empathy would say, wait, hang on a minute. When you're pregnant, you can't even eat a certain type of cheese. You can't, there's don't can't have honey or can't, all these things. And you're telling people to take something that was never clinically tested on anyone, right? So I just thought everyone was completely mental. And then I went to my news director, and I'll name his name. His name is Bhupinder Hundal. He came from the CBC. He took over for some people, and he's the person that has the ultimate editorial control. And I begged him, I went to him, I said, this is not safe. This can't be safe for children. Have you seen this study? Have you seen this? And he, at the end of it, he said, oh, well, Anita, all the scientists in the world got together. And when everybody gets together, they come up with something fast. I said, no, they don't. Come on. Have you ever heard the phrase like too many cooks? But anyway, at the end of that session, he said, I think you should get it. I strongly recommend that you get it. Are you my doctor? You're telling me no, thank you. And so and all that kind of pushback that I put up against the editorial staff is what got me fired. And basically, there's more to it than that, but that's the long and short of it. Was my constantly going to a producer, constantly going to reporters, constantly talking about it, where everybody at Global was just kind of like tight-lipped about it. And I'm like, how are you as a journalist tight-lipped? I even had the 11 o'clock anchor. God, I want to say his name, but his first name's Jordan. How about that? I said to him, he's a great, great reporter. He's good. He's a good guy, but he knows he's got a family and a mortgage. Well, so do I. And I still stood up. I had everything to lose. And so I don't care that you had a family and a mortgage, whatever. But I do too, right? But I said to him, have you heard about this thing in China? Like, what is going on? Like, nobody's, then the whole Wuhan thing. And then, you know what he said to me? He goes, I don't pretend to know what goes on in China. I go, yes, you do. That's your whole job. Like, I didn't say that part out loud. Your whole job is sitting there reading the teleprompter, pretending to know things. So don't tell me that. Like, you can't like, if something's going on in the Middle East, are you going to sit here and go, I don't pretend to know because I'm not there? You talk to people who are there, you read, isn't that how it goes? So that's what it was like there.
Yeah. And I think what the basis of good journalism is the ability and the right to ask questions. And that's what we were denied. And slowly we're being allowed to ask questions today at the very least. But it was a very authoritarian time with mandates, a very authoritarian time with having to uphold this narrative without even questioning it. And there's nothing wrong with questioning. That doesn't mean you're blaming anybody. That doesn't mean you're saying that there's a deliberate effort to hurt people. You're just asking the necessary questions. And what we do as journalists is ask the questions. And it's amazing to me that what happened to a lot of not just journalists but people, because they just asked questions, and that's all we're doing.
That's what you're supposed to do. And just to put it and wrap this this part of the story up, is one of the last things I did was tweet something that said, can somebody ask the provincial health officer why these strip clubs and casinos are open but the gyms and churches are closed? That kind of got me a lot of attention, and I got hauled into another meeting. So and then I got fired right after that. That was the clincher, because I guess I put on my Twitter handle like where I worked. Well, I didn't even use Twitter in years, but they said, well, you've identified yourself as a global employee. Well, I am a global employee. Am I not allowed to say, why is the casino open and the strip club is open but the church is closed?
Yeah,
I guess I'm not allowed to say that.
There was some kind of special bubble in the strip clubs and the casinos that protected people. So that was crazy. Yeah, don't go to church. Go to the casino. Well, I would thank you for sharing that, because it's we need to get those stories out. We still do, because who knows when the next crisis is coming?
Who knows when the next crisis? And for all your viewers who watch you, I would like you to know that about all the people, for the people on the West Coast who watch Global BC. I would like you to know that nobody supported me. Not one single person. So all the, like Donna Friesen, all the anchors that you see, I mean, not that she's going to support me. She's not going to have anything to do with me, but like no one chirped up to say, hey, maybe we look at the other side of the story. So I want you all to know that none of them did. So the next time you watch them on TV, think about that when they're telling you something. You better watch with skepticism. Pardon?
It worried me during the Liberal leadership campaign. Mark Carney specifically referenced to using emergency powers to get his policies through. And that, of course, is exactly what Justin Trudeau did. And it gave us fair warning. And I remember watching that. It was in Kelowna. He had maybe 100 people in the room with him, but there was at least one media agency there filming it. And he said that, yes, I'm going to use emergency powers to push my programs here. So watch out. Here we might be in for another crisis. And that of course is what liberals love to use to get through their policies and to use emergency powers. So I think it's still incredibly relevant what you're talking about, and it will be as long as we are denied free speech, which gets me to my next question. We had last Monday, a week ago today, Mark Carney revealed his cabinet. I think it's one of the worst cabinets ever put together in Canadian history. But are you worried that Stephen Guilbeault might not be environment minister, but he's essentially the heritage minister again? They changed the title of this ministry from heritage to Canadian identity and culture, which I think sounds a little more innocuous. And actually, it sounds a little more nebulous because I'm not even sure what that means. But he's responsible now for the implementation of the Online Streaming Act, which he actually initially drafted as the Minister of Heritage before he became Minister of Environment. So are you concerned that we've got Stephen Guilbeault as the chief censor now in the Carney government?
Well, that's a very good question because these terms are so abstract as to what they become the minister of. Now he's the minister of Canadian identity. They changed it. I didn't know that, like from heritage to that. And so what does that mean? Yeah. So what are you in charge of specifically? And they keep these things so broad as to do this on purpose. So it's a giant umbrella under which they can squeeze anything. So then this guy now, is he going to be the one in charge of the bill, the Online Harms Act? He's going to revise that, or
that could go either through heritage or Canadian identity and culture, or like the last time the Liberals tried to push that through the Attorney General. So that it could go that way again. But I firmly believe Mark Carney will reintroduce that bill because he indicated during the campaign. So I'm very concerned about this.
I think so too, because just look at them. They're all maniacal. They are mentally not mentally unstable. They are absolutely cunning into doing to doing what they want to do. Do you think that for 1 second, do you think that, look at all of us podcasters and how he gets roasted on X and all of the conservative, for lack of a better word, what we are, right? We come up and we actually counter what we see him say. So we take him to task and we kind of really say, he said this and this is what he means. We are very, very critical of him. And that must bruise that giant ego that he has. And if he could stop this in any way, he certainly would put everything in place to stop it, because he's probably maybe more used to it because they actually arrest you in England for Facebook posts and arrest you for things you say. They will take the real criminals and put them out of jail to make room for you if you said something negative online. And I think that the government here would like nothing more than to do that. I mean, you think he enjoys getting roasted by us day in day out, and how the audience is growing so much? So he's going to do whatever he can, along with his little cohort there, Stephen, to put language and to put bills in place and pass them through. What are we going to do about it? I think they're going to be absolutely authoritarian because he doesn't want this criticism, and he's going to label it as misinformation or dangerous talk or something. And they used to label it as, it's to protect children. No, it's not. You do not care about children. That is quite clear. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all of these sexualized. I mean, you think you care about children, you're going to you're laughing. Anybody that says they're going to put something in a child from the government, and I'm supposed to believe that you care about children, you're crazy. So they don't care. Otherwise, no.
We already have laws. We already have laws protecting children. It was totally redundant to say we have to have a new set of laws to protect children, because we already protect children. And I have to be careful how I say this, but there is a deep irony in Mark Carney talking about protecting children, given his wife's connection to the Epstein case and her friendship with Ghislaine Maxwell. Right. So that strikes me as I have to be careful when I say that, but once again, the information is out there, and the mainstream media refuse to touch that. It is highly evident there's a connection there, and his wife was on the list in the black book, and I've talked about that in broadcast. But like I say, it's still verboten. You can't talk about
Yeah.
that.
And why is it like, and I also, if you're having, I always see that one shot of them having a picnic outside, or they're standing outside somewhere, him and Ghislaine and all that. I don't know how close, is that a random picture, or do they have a long friendship? The wife has a long friendship with her, right? I know you're not maybe
Yes,
allowed to
yes.
say. Okay, so pick your friends. What do you think your friends get up to? Like, like why do you not answer to that? And why is Miss Iron Lady, or not Iron Lady, but Miss tough as nails, Bashy Capellos, asking him about that? Asking your
Right.
wife is seen, you know,
Yeah,
in a,
yeah.
with this lady, and what is the connection here?
And
Isn't
yes,
it staggering?
that question should have been asked. But you referenced the fact that Keir Starmer was putting people in jail for
Yeah.
putting posts up he didn't like. That's going to happen in Canada with the Online Harms Act, because there's a thought crimes component, as I'm sure you know, where there's house arrest if one of my neighbors thinks I might say something hateful in the next few days,
Oh, it's
which
utterly
is
ridiculous. Yeah.
ludicrous.
Yeah.
It's
They were
absolutely
coming
ludicrous.
to your house when the convoy was going on, if you had a questionable post. Like, if people in Canada think that we're free, you are missing, you don't know what's happening. But a lot of people,
Yeah,
like my normal girlfriends, and they're not political on Facebook. Whereas there's people like, or on media, right? They will never
yeah.
say these things. So they don't even know that this is happening. But you know that, like, if we had a YouTube channel like this in another country, like Iran, they would come to your house, and I would not be around if this was in another country. But we think Canada, we're a democracy, we embrace free speech. No, we don't. And I think a lot of people do know that now. And that's actually, I'm not, we, you know what, we can be scared of it, but I don't know how we push back against that. I do not accept this. Like, I do not accept this. This
No,
tyranny.
we can't accept it, because it's the end of our democracy if we do accept it and just lay down for it. Which is precisely why I thought this was going to be the election of the century, and it had to turn out in a certain way for freedom to actually reign. I think at the very least, I was critical of Pierre Poilievre at a number of junctures during the campaign. I thought he should have pushed change a lot more and less talk about Donald Trump. But at least we knew where Pierre Poilievre stood on the Online Harms Act. He did say it sounds Orwellian, and it sounds like the Liberals read 1984 as a plan and not a warning. He said that on a number of occasions. So I think he was basically on side that this was a bad, bad bill, totally contrary to Canadian democracy. And there's so much we lost on April 28th with the election of Mark Carney, and I'm not sure we can get it back. But I wanted to ask you, were you in Vancouver when Gregor Robertson was mayor during that 10-year period? So you remember him as mayor?
I do. Yes, of course. Yes. I moved around to New Zealand and stuff for a time, but yes, Mr. Mayor Moonbeam. I remember him. I remember. He was such a he was such a like a fairy dust pretty boy mayor or whatever. Like, I don't know. He's people do not like him here. People think that he single-handedly ruined the real estate and the economy here, but particularly the real estate. Because if you ever spoke out against, like, I've talked about this before, but if you're a normal Canadian family and you come up with $50,000, which is a lot of money to put down on a house, like, some people are nowadays, people are $200 away from insolvency. They can't even save money because they can't even buy the basics. But back then, if you could save some money, or people who do, to put a down payment on a house, you would get, somebody else would come by and go $70,000 cash, no subjects. Foreign money would come. And God forbid you had an issue with that. God forbid you said something, but then you'd be racist. is you're not being racist, but now we have you. It is not fair that somebody can come into your country and outbid you with cash. Like maybe sometimes it's going to happen, but it became an epidemic of that happening to where the face of Vancouver changed. Like you, there's a like, is this? There's no way you can even say this without sounding politically incorrect. But there are times I looked around at my city and I was like, am I in Beijing or am I in Vancouver? That is ridiculous. And then I cannot compete with whatever that money that is. They're wherever they're getting that money, however they get that. A normal Canadian family who dad maybe has a blue collar job and the mom works at Shoppers Drug Mart. I know families like that. You don't have $80,000 cash, no subjects to put down on a house, and nor should you have to do that. But that's what he had to do. And so Gregor Robertson, I think, single-handedly with the government bent over backwards to let that happen, but doesn't take any responsibility for it. If you're the mayor, you're in charge, you can set the rules and advocate for us or whatever. He just sort of was just this little fairy boy that just, I don't know, ruined things here. And then he took the Olympic Village and said, oh, Falls Creek is this gorgeous, very, very beautiful area of downtown Vancouver. And we had the Olympic Village there. And he goes, let's make social housing there. Okay, probably not the greatest place, but fine. You want to make social housing, make social housing. So he tried to set aside like 252 units of social housing. And then they couldn't even financially make that work. So then they sold a portion of that and then they made it regular market real estate. And then I think they have some co-ops there now. But it's like you cannot even come up with 252 units in Vancouver. Like this is how you cannot accomplish this. Then you need to step aside. Like if I was in charge of some sort of housing and I couldn't accomplish that, then I should be fired. I should be accomplishing that like all the mayors should be doing that in all the cities to have affordable housing rather than let viable spaces like what we do in my neighborhood go to waste and people are sleeping in camps. That's what's going on. So if I'm in charge of housing and I can't even do this in the city of Vancouver, what is this Gregor Robertson going to do federally? Why don't you just put all the housing down the toilet right now? Because that's where it's going if you leave that guy in charge. And for Mark Carney to pick such an inept flakezoid to run who knows nothing about marketing and housing just shows you either that guy can be manipulated to do what Carney wants, or he deliberately picked the stupidest person to run Canada into the ground.
Well, it certainly would seem that way, wouldn't it? Because this guy he demonstrated his ineptitude when doubling the price of a house in Vancouver while he was mayor. That's certainly not something you'd want to advertise. But apparently Mark Carney was impressed with that. And
yeah, how could he be impressed with that?
Yeah.
And Carney, Sam Cooper talks about this a lot, the Vancouver model.
Yeah. Sam Cooper, right. Okay. But I think just as bad as Robertson's record on housing is his record on drugs in this city, because he tried to make the hardcore drugs, the most toxic, the most lethal drugs accessible to everybody who wanted them, thinking that's somehow going to make people take fewer of them. And to me, it's part and parcel with the whole idiocy of these supervised injection sites where people somehow convince themselves that this is saving lives, even though every year the number of opioid deaths increases in Vancouver, despite 4 of these supervised injection sites sitting in that city, because you might not overdose on the day you go to the supervised injection site, but you might the next day when you don't quite make it. Yeah. And I grew up in Vancouver Island. I used to go to Vancouver all the time. I thought it was the jewel of Canadian cities. Beautiful, nestled in the mountains on the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful. I used to love to walk through Gastown. I used to just love to shop downtown Vancouver. It is a cesspool now. I've been there recently. It's drug paraphernalia all over the place. There's people passed out on the streets. There's people urinating and defecating. It's like San Francisco North. And that's the city the Democrats destroyed in the U.S. And I'm thinking, what did this man do to exemplify himself for a job in cabinet? I have no idea. I haven't discovered what it is yet, but I tell you, I think he destroyed Vancouver as a city, and I really resent that because, as I said, I used to love Vancouver. I thought it was just a great place to go and visit and potentially live there. I always wanted to live in White Rock. I don't think that's ever going to happen now.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I know. Yes, I completely agree. I mean, you just made, we all feel this way, but it makes me think that we're so used to slowly being maybe there's no word I can think of it than pushed down or abused or something. A slow erosion. Like Vancouver was gorgeous. I mean, you cannot compete with the natural beauty of Vancouver. The natural beauty is great. What the government and is doing to the city is ruining it. And to make to do what we do with the drugs, to have the worst Skid Row in North America, what an embarrassment. Wouldn't you just, if you could be in charge, clean that up, do everything you can to clean that up? And these drug labs that they say, or the safe injection sites that they say will save everybody. People, it is just like a place where people go to tweak out. Because I did a little piece on it. Somebody went in and went on in the inside and shot some video, and I ran it on one of my shows. And it's like something you would see in like it's just a disgusting room that you can go in and tweak out, and people are laying down like drug-fueled zombies. And we think that that's okay. It's not this
yeah,
gorgeous little clean, safe injection site where you can use, and there's somebody there with rubber gloves to narc on you if something happens. You could die in these places. Is a worker going to find you? I don't think so. There's all these mattresses on floors. It's probably the most disgusting thing you could see. And that's okay to have in Vancouver. No, that's completely okay with our mayor, with our government, with our country. And it's like
yeah.
the slow erosion that then we get used to it, and then we don't notice how bad it gets over time. But my son was watching a documentary shot ages ago in the 70s about this cop who was going on the downtown east side. It was really interesting. And it was like, ooh, it's rough. And it was rough, but it is like transcended the roughness from the 70s.
Well, you know what those drug dens resemble for me? You probably haven't seen this movie, but it's called Soylent Green,
Yeah, I know about it.
1973, with Chuck Heston. And there's a scene in that movie where they're all passed out in this huge like hangar, is the only way to describe it. And whether or not it's from drug abuse or just because they're starving, I don't know. But that's exactly what those places look like to me. And I think that's where we're headed. Actually, is Soylent Green.
I know.
With the globalist in charge.
Isn't that funny that movie was made so long ago and they do that, and then you think, oh, we're living that now, where everybody's gooned out, drugged out, and this is what you predict that society is going to be like, and it is. Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
I'm so happy you've seen that movie. It's people.
That's a very famous clip. If somebody wants to look that up, it's Soylent Green is the people. That's what it is, right? You're eating yourself.
Yeah.
Right? In the movie.
Yeah, that's it. And I thought that movie was,
for anyone
so
who doesn't know, they're giving you crackers made from humans in the movie.
Yeah. Want to ask you, you're not in Alberta, you're in BC, but
yes.
what do you think about the Alberta independence movement right now? Do you think it's got enough momentum to actually succeed? Because I have watched Western separatism over the years. I've watched Alberta independence movements. They've never really come close to being potentially successful. They've always hovered around 25, maybe 30% tops. And I'm looking at a poll this week in the Western Standard, 52-48. 52 in favor of staying in Canada, 48 in favor of independence. It's never been that high. And I think the longer they're exposed to Mark Carney, it's just going to go higher. So I don't want to say that the country is going to fall apart. I don't want to say that Alberta is inevitably going to separate, but it sure looks potentially like something that can happen right now.
That's a very high percentage of people who don't want to, that want to separate, right? And I've never
Yeah.
seen a movement this strong come this fast and this furious. Like, this is basically Danielle Smith and the people of Alberta saying, we have had enough. This election, if the Canadians blew it and pick this banker, the most ultimate elite person to come with no political experience to come and run our country, if Canadians couldn't see that that was a terrible choice because we're all paranoid over Trump, because the media told you to be paranoid. If you are at this point where you cannot think for yourself, and as a province, you want to split, then split. I don't care, because I care about my country, but I'm tired of this stuff now. If things are going to get worse and worse. So if Scott Moe and Daniel, if the Western provinces want to break off, well, BC is too, mentally, BC is too liberal. But if parts even want to break off, they just want to run themselves within well, how does she say it? Like, she wants her own autonomy within a national Canada is what she wants. So
Yeah.
the movement is growing. Maybe they need another leader to help actually lead the movement and take them where they need to go. But I think Danielle Smith is putting a panel together to help negotiate on behalf of this movement. But she's serious when she says this, because it's like she's tired of what is being done to the economy, and she's absolutely right. So she's standing up against this, and there's a time where you have to break up. And maybe this is the time. Like, if something isn't working out, you have to split or break up or stop. And I feel like the government is like not the people that work in government, but the people that run what we're doing. We're like a toxin, and we're just toxic for the country. And what do you do with something that's toxic? You have to remove yourself from it. So I'm most interested to see. I don't get offended. I never even got offended at the 51st state stuff. Lots of people didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard for somebody who's ever worn the uniform in the Canadian Armed Forces, who had the Canadian flag on their shoulder overseas, to say that I believe in Alberta independence. It's very hard for me to say that.
Yeah.
I still want to believe in this country, but I'm increasingly being unable to believe in this country because I think it has gone too far down a socialist, collectivist road to serfdom. And I think the final nail in the coffin was probably Mark Carney. I'm really at the point of saying I would rather see Alberta separate than live under an authoritarian Canada where I can't even broadcast without the police showing up at my door or being tossed into jail because somebody thinks I'm spreading disinformation, misinformation, or hate speech.
Mm-hmm.
So it has the last 3 or 4 months of watching Trudeau fall through the floor, and then watching enough stupid Canadians elect Mark Carney because they think he represents change, and to see once again the Conservatives fail. Because I think as long as you think there's going to be an alternative, you think there's going to be something at the end of the road that's better. And we are always able to say that, like, oh, wait till Pierre Poilievre gets elected, or wait till the Conservatives get back in office. It'll be better. And that's what happened, of course, the last time, where the whole separatist movement was squashed, and the Reform Party movement was squashed because we saw hope in Stephen Harper. There was hope there. Mm-hmm. And after 10 years of a Liberal government, and it just doesn't seem to, it never seems to look any better. No. I think a lot of people are starting to feel the way I do.
Yeah, like, we don't want this, but enough is enough. And she's standing up. She's just saying, you're ruining my economy. You're not, like, for oil, for gas. Like, Alberta is like an economic little jewel. I mean, and it pays for other provinces. And she's like, I've had enough of you. And you're putting more down me. You say, but Carney's the type that says one thing to your face. Oh, yeah, but even if you don't build another pipeline, utilize the one you have more efficiently, have a pipeline running across Canada, like, fix this up, like, stop being stupid. And I think that's what she's saying. Like, you're going to leave this oil in the ground so everybody can It's insane. We need that energy because that energy fuels a lot of things, like your stove, your electricity, having a shower, planes, boats, whatever. We need that. You cannot go all electric, and nor should you. Can I tell you a little story? I went on a road trip with some friends, and my girlfriend had a Tesla. This was just this weekend. I got back last night, and the Tesla, I don't know, it was giving me a headache. It was like making me feel like I was sitting in a microwave, to where I started to Google, why do I have a headache sitting in this Tesla? My body does not respond well to electric cars. And there's so much technology in that car. It was like, it reminded me of being in this movie, Scanners. That's an old 80s movie. Like, where I almost felt electrocuted. And I'm sitting in an electric car. And I was just thinking, I could not buy an electric car. This car is giving me a headache. And if anybody says to me, I am not allowed to buy a gas car, can you imagine? I don't accept that either. Like, get out of my life is what I want to say to these people,
Yes.
because it's bad for the economy. You
Yeah.
think we're actually green? The world has gotten greener. We've gotten colder. There's no global warming right now, but they go, oh, that's climate change, whatever they call it now. It's like, remember we used to talk about the ozone layer and all? Nobody's talking about that stuff. They just say this broad term of climate change. Well, what does that mean? Is this because I drive my car? How about you stop flying around in so many jets and look at your carbon footprint, and stop making us guilty for our carbon, because carbon isn't actually bad for the environment. Like, cut this out. And the people that eat this up, their ignorance is what's bringing us down.
Yeah, that's the coldest. It's the coldest Victoria Day I can ever remember in Ontario. It's very, very cold here today. But my final question, I've taken up too much of your time here, Anita, but it's been a
flown
pleasure.
by.
It's flown by. Do you think the Liberals are going to cobble together a majority in time for their first confidence vote, either by flipping some more seats or by getting some NDP to defect to the party?
I think at this point, they will do whatever it takes, and you will have they'll just do whatever they want, and they could get that majority that they want. I think the writing's on the wall. They have no budget. They don't have to be accountable for anything. So if they present no budget, then you don't have anything you don't have a framework to go off of, I suppose. And so you can avoid a non-confidence vote or what have you. And I think that the way they do things, like all of a sudden a box goes missing, all of a sudden this person wins and they're riding over by 20 votes, this happens, that happened. If you look at what happened in the beginning of the Liberal leadership race, if they don't like you, they'll disqualify you. Bye Chandra. Oh, Ruby, you're disqualified too. Like, we will just we will knock you down like you're players on a chessboard. We don't care. They'll do whatever they can, and if they feel they need to squeak out a majority, I wouldn't put it past them. They're I think Canadians can expect that. Yeah.
I think they can. Well, Anita Krishna, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope we can do this again. And anytime you'd like me on your show, I'm happy to do so.
I was just going to ask you. I would love for you to come on, and I would love to ask you questions. I got questions.
I'm always here to answer questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's just breezed by.
It's been a pleasure, and we were talking last week, of course, about possibly doing something together with
Mr.
Jimmy Dore.
I know.
I hope we can do that for the Ottawa event he's got here on June the 1st. It'd be nice to do a little promotion. So, well, let me know.
Okay.
And thanks again for being here. And let's stay in touch and invite me on your show.
Yeah, you come anytime. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye for now. God bless. That was Anita Krishna, and it was a real pleasure just to talk about current events, and we're going to do it again. Thanks for watching today, folks. It's been a pleasure, and I want to go to overtime here. We'll be back again tomorrow at the usual time at 10 o'clock, and I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, but we'll know by then. Thank you. God bless this country. Godspeed to all of you. This has been David Krayden, broadcasting